G'day, it's Lindsay Waddington here. And for everyone around the world, we've got a very special guest today. This lady was a big part of my life growing up. I used to watch her sing on TV on one of my favourite TV shows every week. Would you welcome the legendary Lynne Hamilton? How are you, Lynne?
I'm good.
Yeah?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. It's great to have you around here and a part of our podcast series.
Yeah, it's exciting.
We don't live too far apart.
No, we don't.
No?
It's handy.
I'm a big fan of yours, mate. You want to watch it, I'll be there down at your door knocking on it for smoko. And it's great.
Thank you.
Now, we'll go straight there and get that over and done with, because there's always more to people than the public see.
Yeah.
So you have had a world hit. Like, it's one of my favourite songs ever. And I'm very blessed to know the bloke who wrote it too, Alan Caswell, which you do, obviously.
Yeah, great guy.
And it was a life-changing experience for you, wasn't it?
It was. Yeah. Do you want to know about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So at the time, I was going through divorce,
Yeah.
trying to raise 2 kids by myself and wondering what to do with my life. I was in my late 20s. And, it's a precarious place to be in when you sort of don't know the future.
Yeah.
But I had come out to Australia from England in 1971, having been 5 years, like the second half of the 60s, in a famous girl duo called the Caravelles.
Yeah.
So I'd been like a pop star, for want of a better term, but retired from it. Like,
you were out of it?
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah, because I'd gone in there at age 16.
Yeah.
And then when I was 21, I had gotten married. I didn't want to continue. I'd achieved all my dreams at that young age. And so I got I thought, what can I do for the rest of my life? I know I'll get married. That's all there is left to do. So I got married and got pregnant fairly quickly and came out here with my ex-husband in 71, wanting nothing ever to do with the music industry again. I had it out of my system. But then 7 or 8 years later, going through divorce, and I'm like, well, what do I do? I never had a proper job, like a normal job.
Yeah.
So all I knew how to do was sing. And I was thinking, what could I do about that? I didn't know anybody in Australia, and I don't think anybody knew me. Anyway, I had just to give you a little bit of background, I had an encounter with Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And so that, my life was already radically transformed by that. And that was a fairly new thing that had happened. And so I had this new zest for life and a new sense of there must be a purpose for it. What will it be? And when I was praying one day, I felt like God said to me, give me your voice. And so I remember laughing at him and saying, you do realize how old I am.
Yeah.
I'm over the hill. I've got these 2 kids. You're a bit late, God.
Yeah.
Anyway, the upshot of that was I said, okay, if you can find something to do for me, I want to help you save the world. So, so basically, he gave me that song. That's how it came about.
Incredible.
And like I said, I didn't know anybody, so I just was led to do like a demo. And I shopped it round by myself. I shopped it round a record label, and I ended up with a deal with RCA. And at the Christmas party at RCA in 1978, I was sort of sitting on my own in the corner there, and the Reg Grundy organisation execs were there and came over to me and said, they knew I was like the newest sign for RCA. So they said, can you sing a ballad, love? And I said, yeah, I think I can manage that. So they literally gave me a cassette tape and said, learn this overnight and come in the studio tomorrow morning and you can meet the guy who wrote the song and we'll demo it.
Wow.
Because there's a series coming out called Prisoner. and it needs to be, obviously it's a woman's song.
Yeah.
But the criteria is that we need to have somebody who's completely unheard of, because we don't want the song to be bigger than the series. So, but they said it's just to play over the credits at the end. And I went, yeah, I was, you know.
Well, you buggered that up. The song got pretty big.
Yeah. Well, see, it was never meant to be a single in the first place.
Oh, well, so it was just for the TV
for the
show?
Credits.
Oh, no.
And they said, this is the fee we'll pay you, which I won't mention how much it was.
No.
But my son, one of my little kids, needed a bike.
Like a push bike?
To get to school.
Oh, really?
And I said, okay, I'll do the song, and, you know, for the price of the bike. So that's what happened. But when they heard it, and I met Alan the next morning, and anyway, I knew when I heard the song. I took it home that night and I listened to it and just completely broke down. And
it's amazing.
I'm like, and I knew God said, I'm giving you this. This is for you. This is me. So I said, okay. So recorded it. When they heard it, they loved it, and they said, right, this is much more. This is more than just over the credits now. Like this needs to be a single, and I'd given God the ultimate challenge. I mean, because I so didn't want to be back in the music business. I had it out of my system. I just didn't know anything else.
Yeah.
And because he'd say, give me your voice, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So, but nothing in me wanted anything to do with anything.
If you do one of my songs now, if I buy your son a push bike.
Well, it could be a deal. They said you might want a Harley these days.
Oh, yeah, that'd be right.
So anyway, I said to God, well, look, if this is you, like, I don't want to be in this business, but if this is you, I'll do it for you. But it has to go to the top of the charts. Like, I give him this impossible challenge.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it did. They released it and it just raced up the charts and went gold. It won the ARIA.
Yeah.
Went gold quicker than any recording ever by a female artist at that time.
And there were some big names and big bands back in those days.
Yeah. So it was massive. So I'm like, okay, well, now what? I'm sitting at the top of the charts. Now what? Yeah. Well, now you're going to do concerts and performances and all that. And you're going to talk about me. Because the song is about being in prison. Yeah. And so I incorporated that into a gospel message, which was Jesus came to set the captives free. So it was a tool. Yeah. It was a great selling point for that. Yeah. So I went into the clubs and the concerts and got away with preaching like the fastest gospel in the West, a minute and a half. Because you can't just put that on people in the clubs. It's not fair, you know. Yeah. But anyway, but I did, and
so you're very sneaky with it. You just
because I'd say, look, this song's about being in prison, and do you feel like you're in prison tonight? And I'd be challenging the audience, like, what's depression? What's depression? You know, if not like a prison sentence. What's debt? What's gambling, and what's all sorts of prisons you can put yourself in, or other people can put you in. And if you need to get free, my friend Jesus. And that's what I did with the song, and got away with it for years and led hundreds and hundreds of people to Jesus. So I was happy to be in the business with that message.
So you had a different purpose sort of thing than just being a rock star sort of thing.
Because it held no attraction to me. I'd done it all as a teenager, as a kid.
Now, getting back to that too, Lynn, we'll come back to that. But going back to when you were a teenager, like, we've had an amazing conversation, like how, you know, names you talk about who you were associated with. Yeah. Some people might be going, oh, big noted, but that was just your life. Like, it's like me talking about the local gardener down the corner.
Yeah.
But one story that always sticks in my mind, and this is just so cool, the real Jimi Hendrix, like the real Jimi Hendrix, wanted to marry you.
Yeah.
How cool.
He was off his face at the time.
Who cares?
He proposed.
I would have married him.
Yeah, that was interesting. That when I was 16, I joined a group, a 2-girl group called the Caravelles. And the first label that I was signed to with them was then called Polydor, which turned into Polygram eventually Records.
Okay, yeah.
But it was in London. And so it was Polydor Records, and their other two big artists were the Bee Gees.
Oh, no way.
The Bee Gees and Jimi Hendrix. And the label was owned by Robert Stigwood.
Yeah.
And so, and we were with the same label. So what they used to do back then, like 1,000 years ago, was they'd release songs by all their artists kind of at the same time, and then they'd put a show on the road and feature them all, showcase all their new. So we went to, Jimi Hendrix was the biggest thing in the world at the time. And he was doing a special in Munich, and we went over to Munich, and anybody who was anybody was there at this thing, and we filmed for like a week, and of course he was the star of everything if they could get him out of bed. But no, seriously, Cream, the Stones, everybody,
and
the Faces, Rod Stewart, Tom
for everybody
Jones.
out there, you got to hang with them and meet them and all that, Lynn?
Well, there was only 3 girls featured in the show. So
you would have been very popular.
One was my partner, who was married to our manager, who was with us.
Yeah.
The other one was Mama Cass Elliott.
Oh, crikey. What a show.
And me.
And you.
So there's only 3. So for all these guys, like, that were eyeing us all off, and Jimmy liked blondes.
Yeah.
And so he insisted, being the star of the show, he insisted I sit next to him at all the meals.
I love it.
So we would have these deep conversations, And anyway, he was a fascinating guy, but he scared me. But he was, his presence, all that hair. And, the one thing I regret, though, he wanted to, because he has minders, he has these minders that help him get in and out of lifts. So he had set his minders onto me, like, I want her. I want her in my room. And I'm like, that's not happening. And my manager was very protective, because my dad, who was a bricklayer, had said to my manager, if anything happens to her,
I'll build a nice tombstone.
I will kill you. So I was very protected and, all that. But Jimmy was like, no, I'm having you. And I'm like, I don't think so, buddy. Anyway, he said to me, this is the proposal. He said to me this night, what do I have to do? And I'm like, there's nothing that's going to make this happen. I was like 17, 18 or something. And anyway, I don't know if you've ever seen posters of him back in the day, but he used to wear these big rings, and he liked turquoise, and this massive turquoise ring that was like something to behold. And he's given me this ring.
Really?
He said, will you marry me? And I've sort of said, and he was off his face. And I've said, don't be daft. No, of course I'm not going to marry you. But I should have taken the ring.
Oh, you should have taken the ring.
Taken the ring as one regret. Because a few months later, he was dead.
And that's sad in itself.
Yeah.
And from, like, you would know, you were there and saw it firsthand, but from us, like, watching it from afar, it would have been a very fast life.
Yeah.
It was like on stage, he was very, like, just full on.
Yeah. He was in the burning the guitar on stage era.
Yeah.
It became a thing. Like, he did it once, and then
everyone wanted to see it.
Required of him after that. So he get into quite a frenzy and burn the guitar, and
Now you've, like, we'll keep going from there. Now you've had a couple of huge opportunities like that to potentially have megastar partners or husbands. Like, did Paul McCartney? Did he sort of ask you to go away on a weekend or something?
Yeah, what happened was...
From the Beatles, like the real Paul McCartney.
We moved on from Polydor Records.
Yes.
And the Beatles had a record label at the time called Apple. And they had two artists. They had Mary Hopkins and a band called Badfinger. And they were going to sign us. And we went down to London to literally sign the contract. And we were there for a week in London. And we were at the Apple offices and all that. And they had a boutique in Carnaby Street at the time. John was with Yoko, and that was very controversial. And we had lunch. We went to lunch, and it ended up with just him and me having lunch. And he said to me, "Why don't you stay down?" Because we lived in the north of England, and this was in London. Why don't you stay down for a few days and hang out with me? And I'm like, I think I could. I think I could manage to do that. I'd actually never had a boyfriend.
Yeah.
I was surrounded by all these megastars, and I was not allowed to date because the manager was scared of my dad.
Oh,
so
love it.
I wasn't allowed to date. So I said, yeah, I think you could be the first boyfriend and hopefully the last. Anyway, my manager stepped in and said, "There's no way, buddy.
I hope you sacked him."
There's no way that's happening." So I wasn't allowed to. But funnily enough, the next day was when their whole empire collapsed. I don't know if you recall any of that, but well, you weren't probably born even. But the whole thing was exposed and collapsed, and suddenly we weren't signing any contract because they were going into liquidation, and
okay.
Yeah, that's when that whole thing happened that week. So we actually never did sign with them. And shortly after that, Paul McCartney married Linda Eastman.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but for about 3 months there, he was the most eligible bachelor in England, and he wanted me to stay with him, and I flipping wasn't allowed. No opportunity to be naughty, hey.
Oh, gee, what a story though! You must pinch yourself sometimes, and it would be. I could be wrong, but you tell the stories in some public areas, and do you get that feeling that people are looking at you going, "Yeah, right."
Yeah, your name dropping. Well,
yeah, right. It's Paul. That's huge.
Yeah, I know.
They're mega. Well, their music is still huge now.
Yeah.
But that's a really cool thing. So from a young age, did you dream of being a pop star?
Yeah.
Or just become, you did?
I dreamt of getting out of my town that I grew up in.
Oh, did you?
And I thought, what's the quickest way I can get out of this place?
Yeah.
No, I'm from the north of England, very working class, and people aren't really very ambitious. Nobody gets out of the town where I was born. Yeah. But I went to grammar school, convent school, and by the time I was 13, it was the early 60s, and there were people like Cilla Black and Dusty Springfield and Lulu and all these artists on a pop show called Top of the Pops. And when I first saw Top of the Pops, something just triggered in me, I
want to be that.
You're going to be that, and you're going to travel the world, and you're going to sing.
Wow.
And I used to sing. My job every night was doing the dishes after dinner. And I used to be in the kitchen washing the dishes with the windows open. I'd be singing away with the Supremes and Martha and the Vandellas and all these types of people. And the neighbours would be saying to my mum, she's got something. We can hear her. We hear her every night. You should let her sing. And so I realised I wasn't going to be a nun. I considered that for about 5 minutes and went, nah, no way. And then thought, no, I need to do music. But I didn't know how to go about it. So I had a rock band when I was 14 for a couple of years. And then I left school at the earliest opportunity, which was 16. And I answered an ad in the paper, would you believe, for a singer for an already established recording act, which was the Caravelles. And they'd had a couple of hits already. There was a brunette and a blonde one, and the blonde one was leaving. and they wanted someone to replace her. And they had a very unique sound. It's kind of like folksy jazz, a bit like Simon and Garfunkel, velvety, whispery, smooth.
Yep.
They had a unique sound, and so they had to keep that sound. So when I went for the audition, I had to be able to sound like the other girl who was leaving. And I managed to sound like her. So the only thing was I had black hair, so they said, will you be willing to go blonde?
You sure Jimmy didn't ask him to do that?
I'll go green, purple, what?
Just get me there.
Just put me on the telly. I just need to sing. So, yeah, so I joined them at age 16.
Who were some of the early influences then? Like you talk about singing along to tapes and that with the Supremes, and were they big? Or who would have been some of the, I've got to do that and I want to be like them? Was there people, or no, you just wanted to be like yourself?
Yeah, Cilla Black, Dusty Springfield, Lulu.
Yeah.
I hated Lulu because she was 2 years older than me and didn't have to go to school. Yeah. So she could be...
You knew them all?
No. This was just who I admired.
Admired, yeah.
And I used to watch Lulu and think, oh, you get to do what I want to do, and I've got to flip and go to school for another 2 years, Yeah. But, I admired Lulu and just all the Dusty Springfield, trying to think who else at the time. Yeah, Dionne Warwick. These types of people.
Do you remember the first song that you heard and you're like, I want to be a singer? Can you remember that? Or?
Yeah, it was Dancing in the Street by Martha and the Vandellas.
Really?
Yeah.
What a great song.
Yeah, and I used to sing it, I would sing it in my band.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Straight up.
Yeah, it was nothing like the Prisoner song.
No, it's not.
Yeah, but I used to sing that.
Yeah.
And... then I heard, that was probably it.
Yeah.
The Ronettes, the Crystals, all those sorts of, black girl groups.
Yep.
With the big sound.
Real soul and feeling and emotion. Yeah. Well, thinking of that, then to do something like the Prisoner theme, like On the Inside, it wouldn't have been so strange to get that inner self to sell that lyric then, because... all those soul singers and that's what they did.
Yeah.
They believed in the lyric and they sold it.
Yeah.
So that's probably why they were so successful too.
And the first line of the song when I heard, got home about midnight and had one of those little things where you press the buttons, the recording things for the cassette tape. And the first line, he used to give me roses. I wish he could again. So I was done because I was going through divorce.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, okay.
Could you imagine someone walking in with a box of chocolates just as they said that? He used to give me roses?
Yeah.
No, maybe not.
So I knew, and when I actually recorded it, my voice broke in just the right place. Yeah. Like, I wasn't trying to do it on purpose.
It just happened?
It was just the feeling of it, and there's a lot of emotion in it. So, yeah.
Going back to all that, I know we're jumping around here, but you've had such a colourful life, and we want to go to the next step very soon. But, all these big stars, and they're people that I grew up, you're watching them on TV. Like, I'm a cane farmer's son from Proserpine in North Queensland. So even sitting here talking to you is like, I could never have dreamt of that. I've had people say, what you're doing, Waddo, must be a dream come true. I'm like, I couldn't have dreamt any of this. It's just so amazing, this life I live. But on another level, these people, they're megastars who you're talking, that you hung around, toured with and that. Did it feel like that, Lynn, or no, it was just what we did? We're just all buddies and we travel around doing shows, or did you feel the greatness of what you're doing?
Well, the ones that we worked with were pretty, it was the late second half of the 60s. So there was a lot of drugs. Yeah. And so it was one thing to do TV shows with these people, but socially I wasn't really allowed to mix with them. Yeah. I would have got up to all sorts of stuff probably. I was just a kid. Yeah. So I was protected from the lifestyle, but pretty intimidating. I remember meeting Tom Jones for the first time, and Cliff Richard. When I met Cliff Richard, because Cliff's a Christian, and when I think back, I wasn't a Christian back then, and I remember at the Munich thing, one night they hired a club. They shut it down to the public so that all of us could have it for the night.
Safe, yeah.
And it had a big fountain in the, I won't go into too much detail, but it had this big fountain. And various people were jumping in and out of the fountain, you know, like naked and stuff like that. And there was every kind of drug on the table, every kind of colour of pill you could imagine, and powders and all sorts of things.
Wow.
And I remember looking at Cliff Richard, and he was sitting over in a corner with his manager, away from everybody. And I remember thinking, what's his problem? He's not socialising, you know. But then I looked at what was going on in the room and thought, no, you know. And then my manager's like, come on, girls, we're going home now.
Oh, wow.
But yeah.
Didn't have a go at the fountain?
No,
you didn't.
Wasn't game to go near the fountain because of who else was in it. But yeah, so there was a lot of mad, wild parties and stuff like that. And so with meeting some of them, I was very impressed to meet them. Others, there was a couple of people who I had idolised before when I was young, like 13, 14. And when I met them in person, I was like, oh, well, that's underwhelming.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
A real disappointment, you know, and a couple of my real heroes, you know, and I'm like, oh dear, that's not good.
Wow. Well, so going on to that, so did you ever have dreams of being an actress or anything like that, or no, it was always in the singing part, or?
I can't act to save my life. Seriously. I was offered a part, not in Prisoner, but in another thing that was coming up, and my agent said, "Oh, why don't you try to do some acting?" So I'll go for a reading thing. It's just terrible because I can't pretend.
That is what it is.
I can't pretend anything, you know, and I can't read from a script. Forget it. No.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Well, we'll go on to the next stage. Now, another thing which I've been lucky enough to have other conversations with that camera going, Lynn. So you found a different calling, many years ago now.
Yeah.
And still bringing joy to people's lives. Yeah. But in a different way. Would you like to tell a few people about that?
Yeah, well, because of on the inside, the Prisoner hit was, I said before, God gave that to me. So I already was a Christian, and using that song to bust people out of emotional prisons and, psychological madness and all sorts of stuff. And that went on from that. I did the clubs for years, then I started doing churches, and then I got concerned about the well-being of people. I love people. Yeah. I believe in people. And because I got my dream when I was a kid, I like to see other people get their dreams. And there's usually all sorts of hindrances and stumbling blocks in their life that hold them back from doing that. So I wanted to work with people to realise their potential, and to come so they would know how to identify what they were made of, and become their authentic self and serve life in who they were created to be. And most people never achieve that. They live frustrated lives, miserable. They might cope, but they're not really living. And like I was saying before, there has to be life before death as well as after death. I don't see too many people living life, and so when Jesus said, I came that you might have life and have it more abundantly, I'm like, well, he wants us to live. He paid a big price for us to live. Yeah. So how do we get to that? Well, so I like to, I had a church for 25 years until a couple of years ago.
And you're a working pastor in it yourself?
Yeah, 25, that's a long time. Yeah. It was a training base. I taught schools, and we had 14 countries that we ministered into. I would send teams into all those countries, and it was a full-on big work. And now I've come out of that now, been out of that a couple of years, but I like to develop people. So I guess I'm sort of spiritual life coaching and developing people, bringing them into a sense of who they are and helping them to come into that, and trying to help give them a platform where they can show that to the world. So basically that's what I'm doing these days.
That's so fulfilling. And you've had, we were talking, you've had churches all around the world.
Yeah.
You've travelled all around the world. And it hasn't all been just the glamour spots. Like you don't say, I'm going to have one at Las Vegas, or I'm going to have one. You go to the third world countries and spread the word and the message.
Yeah.
And you were saying that you've got orphans and people walk for days to get to your seminars and that?
Yeah, if there's a crusade on, usually somebody puts a big massive tent up in the middle of a field.
Yeah.
And they'll walk for miles just with a straw mat under their arm, and they'll sleep in the field, you know. Some of the bigger ministries, like the really famous ones, they will go to third world countries, but they'll go to the capital cities where you can still stay at the Hilton and the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're like, deliver me into the Hilton, please.
Yeah.
I've never had that luxury to do that. Like, we stayed in the mud huts with the village latrines.
You had a local bloke called Hilton carrying your bag.
And, you know, where the people are.
Yes.
So it's been very, it's only for the brave.
Yeah.
And you'd really, if you weren't called to it, you just couldn't do it, put it like, not as a woman anyway.
Did you have any, like, I know you don't have to answer this, but did you have any moments when, like, very sketchy, like you're like, oh, I might not get home? Or,
Yeah, because a lot of, there are other religions in these places that are violent, and they hate Christians. So if they can get a machete and hack at a Christian preacher, they will.
Wow.
So your life is in danger from, as it were, strangers in the crowd that have come, they've literally come to kill you if they can. So you really need supernatural protection. And if God sends you, then you're very aware of that, you know. Or they'll want to steal your purse, you know. They'll
what you possibly could be bringing.
Yeah. I remember being in Lagos, and the roads are just like traffic jams there. And we'd been given a car, the car that picked me up, which was about 8 miles away from the venue where we were doing the gig. And this car had automatic windows. It was an old jalopy, really, but it had automatic windows that was stuck in the down position, right? So we couldn't put the window up. So we're driving down the street, and like every few hundred meters, the car's stopping. And you've got these mad people, like ants all over the streets with knives and guns, and it's completely lawless. And, you know, blonde. You know, and they could just reach in the window and slice your throat if they wanted to. So that those trips to the gig were quite dodgy, and you really needed to know that, you know, you had.
Well, that was as a pastor. Let's jump back to your other life, which is on another way. Did you ever feel like, you know, you see things in movies and all that, the paparazzi and that, as a rock star, as a pop star? Did you ever feel unsafe in that environment, or no, it was all pretty looked after?
It was still pretty respectful.
Yeah.
Back then, I mean, these people had to have appointments to even talk to you.
Okay.
And they had to have permission to take your photo, stuff like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, you couldn't just snap around it, you know. So it was still quite formal and polite. So, no, I always felt quite safe.
Yeah, so, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you see in all the Hollywood movies and that, and it's the paparazzi, and, you know, like, it's all the, well, we know there's been some tragedies come out of it. But, yeah, no, I was just interested because you were there in the middle of it all.
Yeah. No, I never encountered that, but there was a funny thing that happened that I'll tell you if I've got a minute.
Yeah.
With Joanna Lumley from Absolutely Fabulous. She was a model at the same time
Yep.
that we were, and we had the same PR company, so we were around one another. And she's gorgeous. She's a gorgeous-looking lady. And anyway, we had the same photographer. And I won't say the guy's name, but he was photographer to the stars and royalty and all sorts of things. And he used to say, remember, I was just a kid.
Yeah.
So he's wanting us to look sexy and all that. I didn't know how to look sexy. So he would say, say Thursday. Right, you had to say Thursday. So I'm like, oh, that's weird. I didn't realise what he's trying. Thursday. So anyway, so coming back to recent years, right? So that was just a weird experience with this photographer, a weirdo. Thursday. So the Ab Fab movie that came out a few years ago, there's this scene where the paparazzi are chasing them.
Yeah.
And they're on the run, and they get home, and they get through the gate into the front door, and they bust in the front door to get home, the two of them.
Yeah.
And Joanne Lumley turns around at the door and puts her arms in the doorway and faces the paparazzi and goes, "First."
So that's where they come from.
And I had somebody, now that would mean nothing to the audience in the theatre. That would mean nothing to them. Like, why is she saying Thursday? But I had told my ex-husband who was with me about that thing with the Thursday. And, you know, talking about people believing you or not. And he said, you said that he did that thing. And I'm like, there's the proof.
It's straight there.
Thursday.
Oh, I love it.
Joanna Lumley, yeah.
I might try it, see if it's sexy. So Thursday. Was it?
No.
Close? Well, I got to say, Lynn, it's been a real privilege. It would have been, 2 years ago now, I had the pleasure of being at a private function, and I was playing guitar there, and you got up and sang on the inside, and that,
Yeah.
I didn't think that could have got any better. But now to sit and have a chat with you on the podcast here, it's been amazing. Like, I've loved your story. I've loved to have a chat with you, and I hope we have a lot more chats down the track.
Yeah,
and
there's a book full of them.
It's just really good. We might even do this again if we're lucky enough. You might agree.
Yeah.
In the near future, for Lynne Hamilton, what do you reckon is going to be on the cards?
Oh, it's hard to say. I don't really know. What I'm supposed to do is do less, but it needs to be, less is more.
Yep.
So because of my age now, I'd have like lower energy levels and I can't sort of do a lot.
Yeah, I'm sort of going through that at the moment.
What I do, I'm like, I don't know how long I've got left on the earth, and I'm not trying to be melodramatic, but the next 10 years really matters what I do, and I can't be wasting it, right? So I need to be really selective about what I'm doing and with who, and make sure that I'm not wasting time with projects that are just going to be dead-end projects. So
they've got to do something.
I want to work with people who want to become what they were predestined to be.
That's
and
lovely.
who will work with that.
That's
so
lovely.
I think the mentoring thing is going to carry on, and the life coach thing.
On the other side, do you reckon there'll be any singing for all your fans down the track, or never know?
Yeah, I can't see myself doing it again as a career. But I'll know, like, if I get invited to do certain things, I'll immediately throw the question upwards, do you want me to do this? If he says yes, I'll do it. If not, I've got no ambition for it.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Actually, before we sign off, that's another thing. I was very interested to see, like, once again, people have to understand you're like this pop superstar and you're hanging around with all the... We should have talked about the Bee Gees too. They're one of my favourites as well.
Yeah.
I love their music. But anyway, you sort of walked away from all that just to go into another calling.
Yeah.
But I was talking to you about that, and you said, I would just as been happy to be a backup singer.
Yeah.
As much as being the person at the front microphone.
Yeah.
That intrigues me, because usually, like I've been in bands all my life, doesn't matter how big or popular
Yeah.
or whatever, usually a front person becomes a front person because they're meant to be a front person. That's where they want to be.
Yeah.
But very rarely you see somebody that's the front person. Next minute they say, I actually would have liked to been over there with the, the backup singers.
I think I love backing vocals. And for me, I've always done my own backing vocals when I've recorded.
Mm-hmm.
I love the layering of the harmonies and, I love that because it's creative.
Yes.
So I'm not saying I would prefer it, but I love it. It's something I love.
Okay, yeah.
So I have friends who've recorded albums and I've gone, let me sing the backup.
Oh, I love it.
And they're like, would you? Why would you do that? Well, yeah, because you're my mate and
So good.
I think it would work well. So, yeah, I love the studio thing with the trying things, with backing vocals. And I can do backing vocals and not sound like me.
Yeah, wow.
It's bizarre. So it's just a little thing that, I like to do.
I was actually sort of looking into the future for you for maybe the next 12 months. I can probably see you doing a song that I've written and making it famous in 30 countries. What do you reckon?
Why not?
I'll sign that up there.
Why not? Do you have a big blue turquoise ring?
I will get one.
Put down as a
And I'll
deposit.
get big fuzzy hair. Oh, mate.
Yeah.
It's been a wonderful life. Really proud to have an association with you, Lynn. Thank you very much for coming along and sharing your story to the world, really. And it's
Yeah.
I hope they find it as interesting as I have.
You never know who's watching, do you?
You never know who, well, as you're
Well, you
telling me.
kinda do, don't
You
you?
kind of do.
Yeah.
You kind of do. But
Yeah.
thank you, Lynne Hamilton, one of our greatest treasures and one of our biggest superstars. Thanks for coming along today, Lynn.
My pleasure.
See you next time. Thanks, everyone. Hope you all enjoyed today's episode. For more episodes, you can check out my YouTube channel or the podcast app and follow my social media at Lindsay Waddington Music. See you all down the track somewhere.